What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, I thought I'd do a little Middlekauff Mailbag because we skipped one during the middle of the week, and I just had a bunch of questions. And then once the weekend, like Saturday, Sunday comes, they kind of get outdated once everyone plays. So I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon, right before the Packer-Washington game, which hopefully is a fantastic competition between two teams. But let's just bang out, 30 minutes worth of questions, and then we will get on with our day. We will start with Aaron. Longtime listener. Message for the bag. Not a Vikings fan, but JJ looks like he can absolutely sling that pill. What do you think of his first game? I think you learn more about a guy. I mean, this is pretty evident when they struggle than when they're having success. Any player, when it's going well, looks good, right? I mean, there have been a lot of guys in the history of pro sports that had good weeks, that had good months, but like having a long career obviously is very difficult. But in that individual moment, which is the only 60 minutes of NFL football in the regular season the kid had ever played, I don't remember seeing a guy look. Usually, when you're having a game that catastrophic, right? It's one thing you throw a pick, or like last year, Lamar Jackson in the playoffs had the bad interception, then he had the fumble. Like he has so many games that, like over the course, you always feel like it's going to kind of work its way out. Now in the playoffs, it's been a little different, but he was excellent in the second half, so it wasn't really that shocking. It wasn't shocking at all, right? I think with JJ, all we could go off of is like, is this guy bad? Is he completely overwhelmed? And you're like, well, it's only one game. I love it when people do that. Like, don't overreact. Overreact, like we have one game to go off. What are we supposed to talk about? That's what we talk about, what we just witnessed. And there was no way that every human being, including Kevin O'Connell, it had to cross his mind on the sideline. Are we going to have to call Kirk Cousins in like 3 weeks? Because our team's really good. We're going to have Darisaw coming back. Jordan Addison coming back. I mean, those are high-end players. We have arguably the best receiver in the league. We have an excellent defense with an excellent defensive coordinator. And then he turned into just a great player. I mean, there's no way around it. The eye test, the ball placement, the arm strength, clearly the mobility. But the one thing you never know about a player, especially at quarterback, in my experience, being around football and watching football extremely closely, is the intangible level of mental and physical toughness. And physical toughness, some of these guys play in the NFL or in college, and if you play at the right program, you're not getting hit that often. And then you come to the pros, and even if you're on a good team, a lot of good teams' offensive lines are hit or miss. They start getting peppered. So can you physically handle it? And usually when you're physically going through it, mentally do you break? And again, one game on the road against the Bears, who look like they have a pretty good defense. Whenever I see someone like the defense let them down, the defense had to be gassed. Had to be gassed. So I'm impressed. Now, can he go on to have like rookie of the year type season? Long way to go. And I know he's not a rookie, but in the NBA, which I think the NFL should, maybe they did change that rule. Remember Blake Griffin, some guys have hurt their knees and then played the second year. I think he should be considered a rookie. Now, you could argue it's a little advantage because mentally he was in the room, but I don't know. I mean, when you have multiple knee surgeries and don't play a snap. So, yeah, I mean, excellent performance. Big Packer fan. With Ed Policy taking over and no owner, do you think the Packers could be the team of the future with his leadership? Spent big and draft well. Congrats on everything. I would say nothing's going to change, right? I'm recording this before the game, but unless something catastrophic happened, they're going to be really good this year. And they've been really good for 30 years. I don't think anything's going to change. Now, the margin for error of winning playoff games, winning the NFC Championship, where they went to a lot, with Aaron and couldn't get over the hump. They went to the one Super Bowl. I think they lost, was it 4 NFC Championship games? They lost to the Falcons. They lost to the 49ers. They lost to Tampa. And they lost to Seattle. So I think there's a big difference the way we look at this team historically, if you went, hey, Favre went to a couple Super Bowls, won one. Let's say Rodgers had won one of those NFC Championship games and won a second Super Bowl. You'd be like, hell, they've won three Super Bowls over the last 30 plus years, or winning one a year or one every 10 years on average, but over the course they're making the playoffs all the time. I think we'd look at them a little differently. I mean, they've only been one Super Bowl in what I consider the internet era, which is starting, 99, 2000. So um, I'm bullish on the franchise, but I don't look at them much differently with Ed Policy than you did or were with Murphy. I think the same infrastructure, the same mindset of the GM has a lot of juice. Obviously offensive, innovative coaches and a well-run operation. It's a very, very impressive operation. There really is no way around it. I know they don't win Super Bowls at the same clip as some of these other franchises, but I mean, think how many teams in the NFL would sign up for what they got cooking. Massive Rams fan, season ticket holder. Kroenke needs you guys because he spent about $8 billion on that stadium. I fly to all the home games from San Francisco and have been doing that since McVay was hired. I can't relate to you, though I have a lot of respect and admire you. To be that passionate about something, and it's one thing like if you are a season ticket holder to a major college or an NFL team and you live within, I'd even say, hour and a half, 2 hours, like a drivable distance. When you have to go to the airport, even though it's a short flight, 45 hour, depending on if you're coming from San Jose or San Francisco, that takes some effort. Even if it's a day trip, which is very possible if you got the 1:30 kickoffs, fly in the morning, go to the game, fly back at night. I've actually done that before, but I have a lot of respect for you. I mean, your fandom is pretty impressive. Do you think the Rams defense, especially their defensive line, isn't getting enough love? They rarely talk about they rarely get talked about and haven't allowed more than 10 points in 5 of their last 7 games. Everyone rightfully talks about McVay and the offense, but the defense looks like it's heading toward an elite status. I would say this. I saw a stat that they hit CJ Stroud on like over 40% of his dropbacks, and I think hit him like either 7 or 8 times, and I know they sacked him 3 times. The defensive line is a great defensive line can make a defense. Obviously, a Hall of Fame defense, you got to be good at every level. You got to have a middle linebacker. You got to have defensive backs. But if you just have an elite defensive line, it's going to be hard for your defense to not be good. It really is, right? I don't care how many holes or weaknesses or replaceable players you have on the back, 6 or 7. If you have an elite pass rush, dominant run players, you're just going to be good. And then I give you of the 7 guys, let's say 3 of them are really good starters. Like most teams don't have multiple good corners. If you got one good corner and you can mix and match with some safety help and your linebackers are solid, you're going to be a really good defense. It's crazy how some of these offensive coaches, and I think this has to do with the investing in the quarterback. Once you pay the quarterback 40, 50, 60 million dollars, you got to draft well on defense. And if you do that, like your defense is going to be a little under the radar, which the Rams are with a lot of guys on rookie contracts, especially once Aaron, calls her quits. So you got a lot of guys on rookie contracts that are really, really high level players. And if Fisk and Jared Verse become Pro Bowl, especially Verse becomes like a Khalil Mack type guy, then that changes the course of your franchise. What is a dominant trend in today's National Football League? He said NFL, but sometimes I just like saying it out. You think we'll look back on in 10 years and say, we're totally wrong about that. 10 years ago, we still believed in paying running backs, punting on 4th and 2, and questioned whether mobile quarterbacks could win long term. Well, I think one of the big reasons we go for it now on 4th and 2 and whether mobile quarterbacks could win long term is every quarterback's a mobile quarterback. They used to be in the minority. They used to be an outlier, right? The reason we talked up Michael Vick or McNabb or back in the day like Steve Young or Randall Cunningham, they were kind of it. Most of the guys were just like sitting back in the pocket and slinging that pill. They were not elite athletes relative to NFL players. I mean, they were obviously like Dan Marino's a good athlete, but relative to like Lawrence Taylor, well, I mean, think about the amount of quarterbacks now that are mobile. Even of the top guys, You would say Burrow is the least mobile of like the top end group, and he's a pretty mobile quarterback in terms of movement ability. He's not Peyton Manning or Phillip Rivers in there. So it's based on college. And you go, are we ever going to get back to that individual? And I say this to Colin all the time, like Jared Goff. Is Jared Goff going to exist again? Just a guy who can't really move. I've watched a decent amount of the quarterback so far this year. To me, Garrett Nussmeier, my comp for him, he's got a little like the good version of Jimmy Garoppolo. I wouldn't call him a bad athlete, but he's not he's not Eli Manning. But then you look at all the other guys, like they check boxes of athleticism. So a lot of it's based on, who's coming up. And to me, the 4th-and-2 thing became a product of that. Way better, more mobile quarterbacks. So it's like I basically have 3 options on short yardage stuff. I can hand it off. I can have the quarterback run around or just run, or I can pass. So you just got more options to call. Plus, because of the defensive rules, in theory, I know week 1 was hit or miss, but over the course of a season, it's just easier to play offense. Well, we're never going back, right? They're never just, and listen, this bothers me sometimes because I don't want to see anyone get a concussion or anyone get knocked out. But some of these passes are hospital balls. And this is where I agree with Tom that forever, not that guys didn't get KO'd and make passes into hostile environments where safeties and linebackers were, but they had to think twice. And now guys let it rip, and they just don't have to think twice. When I hear people say that week 1 game, like Ferguson should have caught it, that ball 20, 30 years ago, Ferguson is cut in half. And Dak probably doesn't let it rip because he's laying his guy out to dry. Now, it doesn't even cross his mind, like they can't touch him. And then what happens? Ferguson has to dive into the ball, and what's his name on 32? God, my brain's not firing. Haven't even had a cocktail this week. What's he supposed to do? Float away? Right? You could be Deion Sanders or Ed Reed level athlete. You're just going to run into his head. I see this countless times during the year where a guy gets flagged for a defenseless receiver. It's an awful pass, and the guy honestly there's nowhere else he could touch him, even when he's trying to be safe. So that's a great question. I think it's just more offensive-oriented things. Maybe how tight ends are underpaid. I mean, right now, a high-end tight end is making way less money than a wide receiver. And I hear on precedent a lot, or that's the market value. Well, if the house I'm sitting in right now was worth $100,000 and my neighbor sells their house for $1 million, if I tried to sell my house, they wouldn't come to me and go, it's the same house. Go, well, the last time you bought the house, $100,000. So, with inflation, we'll give you $200,000. No, it's based on the comp of your next house. But all the comps are based on previous tight ends. But the game is so much different. It's like I'm catching 90 balls. I see guys catching 75 balls, 80 balls, get $75, $80 million. And you want to pay me $45, $50 million because I'm just a tight end, even though I do what they do and honestly more. They kind of get screwed. But there's no way to break out of that cycle. I don't have a great answer. I think, I don't really have a great answer for that. Because I think part of the trends are you don't see them coming. And then an individual, and that's what makes it like Chip Kelly was ahead of the curve with the way he played and the space and the pace he went. And I'd even say the spacing of the passing game with Mike Leach 15, 20 years ago. All that stuff is integrated in. In most of the world, things move down. But in football, things move up. Like, think about high school football. A lot of good teams, De La Salle was great and they ran the triple option. But for the most part, like the spread offense and spreading it out wide, that's been happening now for a long, long period of time. And it's been moved up into college and it's now moving its way up into the NFL. And as we get more and more of these quarterbacks, they always say it. The first thing they ask when they get to the Senior Bowl, they go, raise your hand if you've ever been under center. Not even just in college, but in your life. And the majority of guys don't raise their hand because they've been in shotgun the whole time. So does under center end? I doubt it because there are going to be enough younger Shanahan guys that the play action pass. There are benefits to having that. What if like every team is just running tush pushes 15 times a game? Ratings would drop. We are extremely excited to announce our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Everyone knows and loves their hotels and casinos, but now you can use the top-rated Hard Rock Bet sportsbook to place all your NFL bets this season. Hard Rock Bet is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida and is also available in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, with more states to come. You can also play on Hard Rock Bet's online casino if you are in New Jersey. As we gear up for the NFL season, sign up for Hard Rock Bet and make a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Head over to Hard Rock Bet, sign up, and make your first deposit today. I know you and Colin have talked about this before, but a defensive head coach has not won the Super Bowl since Bill Belichick back in 2018-19. And it goes all the way back to Pete Carroll after that. The top teams with a defensive coach are clearly the Ravens and the Bills. My question, do you see this being a hindrance in both these teams ever winning or making a Super Bowl? Or am I galaxy braining this too much? I think when you got those two quarterbacks, if Lamar or Josh, if Lamar got on a heater, they would be tough to beat. If you told me Lamar had a month where he played as good a football as he could play, I would say the Ravens win the Super Bowl. You can't say that about Josh. Josh could play the best football humanly possible that he can play, and they can lose playoff games. But no one's as good as the Ravens if he's playing at the high level because their defense is just better. They just have better players. And obviously the running back. Now Cook's pretty good too. So difference. Obviously Henry's going to the Hall of Fame. Is Cook? You got a long way to go. But Cook can get you 150 yards, all purpose, no problem, with his eyes closed. Score a couple touchdowns, catch some balls. So that it's the offense isn't the issue. It's, to me, defense. And you can never, ever win a championship in football, high school, college, or the NFL at the highest level in big playoff games and obviously the Super Bowl if your defense isn't good. And that's the thing I always get back to with the Bills, which they're coaches' defensive guys. When you look at the Ravens and the Bills, the Ravens typically are a well-rounded team. By the end of last year, they definitely were. But the Bills haven't been. Now, granted, the Bills made a bunch of defensive plays against the Ravens in that playoff game, so I don't know. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if either one wins it. Right now, they are clearly two of the 5, 6, 7 teams at most that can win the Super Bowl. With Purdy being out 2-5 with a turf toe, things look. My mother-in-law, I'm on this group text. I just got a text that said Purdy turf toe 2-5. Jennifer, we know you're a little late with that news. Things look pretty gloomy on paper. However, I tend to give a more optimistic view. Granted, I'm a little biased. Assuming there are no more major injuries, I know there is a big-ass assumption. I think the schedule sets up pretty nicely for them. With their next 4 games, Saints, Jags, Cards, Rams, they should come out of it at least 500. With all their defense showed against Seattle in week 1 and anticipation of getting some playmakers back, Robinson, I think Mac Jones needs to play like Jimmy Garoppolo, light, for them to be in competition. Am I crazy? Their defense was excellent last week. So if you get a defensive effort of just elite tackling, good DB play, you can stay in games, especially against, like you said, the next couple games. The Saints, Jack's got some players in the Cards. I think if you are 3-1 after your first 4 games, if Mac has to play, you're in pretty good shape. John Lynch did say that they view him week to week. I could argue what the hell's the difference between week to week and 2-5? It's usually we get 6-8, right? Out a year, out 1-2. 2-5 is a pretty big difference. 2-5 could technically mean he might come back that second week, or he could miss till the middle of October. There's a big swing there. That's pretty big open-ended. It's like any of you on the dating apps, what's your age limit? There's a big difference between going 25 to 35 and once you go 21 to 60. So the 2-5 thing's a little crazy to me. But listen, Purdy was, I thought he had one bad throw in that game, the second interception, but for the most part, he was lights out. If you told me Purdy was healthy, they easily could run the table going into that Rams game. I just think Mac Jones is a pretty big wild card. And if he plays well, they obviously should beat the Saints. And they definitely could beat one of the Jags or the Cardinals. But if you win this weekend, ideally, then worst case, you would be 2-2 going into the Rams game. But like you'd be favored in the Cards game, which is in San Francisco. Jags game, that might be tough. Coming off the Saints game, long flight out. I guess the Jags game would be at home, huh? Because that would be their home opener. Yeah, because they played Seattle. So they go road, road, and then home. Um, it's tough, man. But this is why you pay your quarterback or your coach a lot of money and your quarterback a lot of money. Obviously, one thing with a quarterback, and it's no one's fault, no one wants to get injured, but durability really matters. And that to me, Purdy is a pretty big badass. To be the last pick in the draft and to be as good as he is, like, we're not seeing that again. Like, we have seen that in my adult life, like, once, and that was undrafted free agent Tony Romo. Tom Brady's situation being drafted pick, that's such an, to be the greatest quarterback of all time. But over the last 20 years, like, it just doesn't happen. If you hit Russell Wilson or Dak or Kirk in like the third or fourth, like, that's unheard of. Nick Foles in the third. Most of the good quarterbacks in the NFL, well, let's look at all the top guys. Patrick Mahomes, round one. Lamar Jackson, round one. Josh Allen, round one. Joe Burrow, round one. Justin Herbert, round one. Let's even go to some of the random guys. Kyler Murray, round one. Jalen Hurts, round two. You just go around the league, right? Even at like some of the guys on that list. Who are they playing? The Jags. Trevor Lawrence, round one. Rams, Matt Stafford, round one. Sam Darnold, round one. JJ McCarthy, round one. Look at all the guys that started. Drake May, Caleb Williams. You just don't get a lot of like, yeah, 6th round pick starting. that's not very normal. Mac Jones, round one. So yeah, I mean, it's just I don't really know what to say. I'm going to be fascinated to watch. I think they would be in major trouble if their schedule was hard. If their next 2 weeks were like, you know, Ravens Packers or something, you'd be like, well, what am I even? It's not even fair to expect Mac and Kyle to win those games. But the one reason I felt confident, even before I knew what their roster would look like, and even when I knew their roster, still had a lot of question marks with some of these random guys playing. But easier schedule, like it's easy for people to go, you never know. I hate it when people say easy schedule. And I mainly agree, but the schedule's pretty easy. I mean, you get the Saints week 2. Like that's a pretty easy draw. It could be easier. It could be Miami, but it sure as shit ain't the Bills. It sure isn't the Eagles. So, I mean, I think if you just listed what would be the 5 teams, if you got some major injuries and you're missing your quarterback, you would want to play. I'll promise you this. You would draw the Saints. Question for the pod. What are your thoughts on the Eagles OC throwing the O-line under the bus in his recent interview? I saw this question. I looked it up, and I could not find it. So maybe I missed it. Maybe I'm just doing a bad job of searching on the interweb, but I could not find the situation. Now, I'm going to give an overall take here. I talk for a living and have done it for a while. So if you get me on an interview with whoever, I'm comfortable talking. It doesn't mean I won't say something stupid every once in a while. It doesn't mean I say things that like, I probably shouldn't have said that. Or it's like, I don't even give a shit. But I know what I'm doing when I'm talking in terms of in a public forum. This guy, and I would say the same thing about like Pete Carroll or Belichick at this point, or these guys have been in front of a microphone or like Matt Stafford. They have been doing interviews forever, so they know exactly what they're doing. If you have never been in a position with a camera and a microphone in front of you, like this guy's a lifetime position coach. This guy's not used to talking in the media. That's not an excuse. And again, I don't even know what he said, but I'm just saying I would give grace to any individual the first time they become a coordinator and like that first half of that first year. And that includes the offseason too. Like it's a pretty dramatic, you never have to talk, say a word till like every Thursday you talk. And everyone wants to talk to you and get your opinions on stuff. That's a pretty dramatic shift from just being like, what are you doing? I'm just hanging out in my office. Get some downtime? Yeah, we're just BSing. To like, no, I have a press conference in 10 minutes. And in the first game, we had an hour delay. We got our star wide receiver who can be a little diva-ish. I mean, there has been some quarterback wide receiver friction before. Like it or not, it came out. They pushed back. Brandon Graham said it. We're not making that up. So it's like there's a lot going on. You got an intense environment. You got Howie looking over your shoulder. You're trying to prove to the players you know what you're doing. And it's to me, I'd even say I'm not expect anything unless you're a disaster. I put no emphasis on any press conference you do in the off season. The off season's cake. You're working 3 or 4 days a week. You're going to the pool with your kids 3 days a week. You're playing golf twice a week. You're chilling. You got a tan on. You're looking good. There aren't stresses. Give me week two after you just lost a barn burner and the offense had 220 yards offense. What do you sound like on Thursday? It's hard. It's hard, and it's position. Some guys are comfortable doing. Vic Fangio's done a million press conferences. So whether the Eagles have a bad defensive performance or a good performance, like he knows what he's doing, right? Sean Payton, Bo Nix, like you could put a mic in front of him a minute after that game ends, and he can just handle himself, right? Doesn't mean he's going to say what you're going to want him to say, or maybe even something he regrets, but like he's going to be okay. You give me a guy that's not used to talking, it's no different than I think about this all the time when people, because how would you not? If I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I'd be like, I can do that. If I just gave you a microphone and say, hey, I'll give you 30 minutes to prepare, and then you're just going to talk for 45 minutes on football, Godspeed. It's a little harder than you think, you know? It's like, can you just go and keep people's attention? But if I gave you 5 years of doing it, if you know your shit, you'd be fine. So I give, again, I don't even know if this happened. I couldn't find it when I Googled it. Maybe it's a bigger story than I realized. You never know in Philly. I also think little stories in Philly become big. But I think you got to give the first time coordinator a little grace. But this also shows you that they go to KC. KC's defense was atrocious. You know they're going to, Spags is going to have rally the troops. What if they have another rough outing on offense? And Saquon's not as involved. AJ, the passing game's weird. It's difficult. These are really, really hard positions. I'll never forget I had an offensive coordinator who got fired, and they still owed him. And this is like 8 years ago when it was coordinators just started making like if unless you were a top guy. But he was a first time coordinator. He was making $1 million a year, and it was a really big. I mean, that's a ton of money. He's like 5 years ago, I was making $75,000. So he had worked his way up, and he's like, I don't feel bad cashing these checks because he got fired and then he didn't work the next year. The things that were said about my family, the things that were said about me that my family had to read, he's like, it's a lot different being in the coordinator position than it is the quarterback coach or the O-line coach or the D-line coach because you are truly under the firing line. So it's like the reason I get way more money doing this is the stress it puts on my life because it goes dramatically up. And then from the coordinator position to the head coaching position, that's like a 50x position. So there is an element, and we all know anyone who's read about stress got to be one of the biggest killers in the world. And we get a lot of that here in America because capitalist society, got a lot of stressful situations going professionally, which I like at times. I mean, it's good to get your blood flowing, but there's a balance of the pressure that some of these guys are under, especially in a place like Philadelphia. So I wouldn't want to be that guy. It's hard to follow. I mean, they just won the Super Bowl. So anything less than being a dominant team with a dominant offense, especially all their fans, and I support Philly fans, but let's face it, like Jalen's an elite guy. Why aren't you considering Jalen a top 5 guy? Well, yeah, he's played excellent in the Super Bowl, so he deserves a ton of credit. We all think the guy is mentally tough, wired the right way, and when his good is good, it's awesome. But like over the course of the season, he's kind of a roller coaster ride, and he can have games where you're like, what's going on? And that's a little different than the other guys in the top 5. No one says he sucks, but obviously the Super Bowl is the most important game that he'll ever play, and he's played in it twice, and he was good. So you get a lot of credit for that. And he's Super Bowl champion. No one can take that away from you. He's being paid a lot of money. No one can take that money away from him. But just in terms of like, he's not Peyton Manning or John Elway. So he's a really good player who, when you watch him randomly, can look pretty shitty as well. His game is, honestly, sometimes it's not great. He's not a great watch. I think that's part of it. Like you watch Justin Herbert in that Chiefs game, you're like, God, this guy's just a great watch. Right? You watch Joe Burrow when he's on, or something like sometimes Jalen Hurts. Yeah, he scored 3 touchdowns. He threw one and he had 2 tush pushes. Like, great, cool. I think that's some of the pushback on him. Though I respect it. I mean, the tush push is because he's got really strong legs. Like most people, I see other guys trying the tush push. They don't get it because they can't get any push because they can't squat 6,000 pounds like he can. I mean, that's the advantage they have. And that's what all their players say. It's not just their O line's good, it's the power in the quarterback. Most guys can't get that low and can't be that powerful. Like he's a huge part of it. But we got to be honest about this. Sometimes he's just a boring player, and so boring works. You know, a lot of people own boring companies that make millions of dollars. So just because you in something that's not glamorous, it doesn't matter. But he can have moments where he's just not that glamorous of a player.